You're listening to Built for Nature, an exploration of how humans are designed to live through first principles: light, water, magnetism, and the deeper forces that shape human biology. Today I'm going to discuss the fourth phase of water by Dr. Gerald Pollack. Dr. Pollack is a professor at the University of Washington in Seattle, a mainstream scientist who has spent decades studying one thing: water. The big idea from this book is simple. Water is not just a passive liquid in your body, it's actually one of the main drivers of energy and structure in biology. In this episode, I will share the biggest takeaways from the book, and more importantly, how it changes how we think about our health. So lately, I've been working to understand health more from first principles, not supplements or hacks, but things like light, water, magnetism, circadian biology. And I've basically been asking, what environment did humans evolve in, and how far have we drifted from it? What does the ideal human environment actually look like? And this book kept coming up because it challenges one of the most basic assumptions we all have, that water is just water. We're taught water can be solid, liquid, or gas, and that's it. Pollack here has demonstrated that there's actually a fourth phase of water. It shows up almost everywhere in biology. And this discovery has some pretty important implications. Most of us were taught that water is basically the background of life. Cells float in it, reactions happen in it, but it's passive. Pollack demonstrates the opposite. He shows that when water is next to a surface, especially a hydrophilic surface like proteins or collagen, it organizes itself into a more structured state. He calls this structured water the exclusion zone, or easy water, because it literally excludes particles and solutes. And what's crazy is this isn't a tiny molecular effect. In his experiments that he goes over in the book, these structured zones can extend to hundreds of microns, which is enormous on a cellular scale. And that matters because biology is basically all surfaces: proteins, membranes, fascia, blood vessels. Everything is an interface. So if water behaves differently near surfaces, most of the water in your body is not behaving like that water in your glass or your water bottle. This is where things start to get really interesting. So Pollack found that this structured water isn't just more ordered, it's electrically different. It carries a negative charge. And when that happens, the surrounding water becomes more positively charged because protons get pushed out. So you end up with a natural charge separation. In other words, a battery. No membrane, just water and surface. This shows that nature has built-in electrical infrastructure, and biology evolved on top of it. We tend to think of energy in purely chemical terms: calories, ATP, metabolism. But this shows that some of our energy is electrical at a more fundamental level. This is probably the biggest takeaway. Pollack showed that light, especially infrared light, actually expands these structured water zones, meaning light is literally adding energy to the system, charging the battery, not metaphorically, physically. Water absorbs the light and converts it into structure and charge. So now you have this chain. Light leads to structured water, leads to charge separation, leads to usable energy. And that raises a really uncomfortable question for modern life. If light plays a role in charging biological systems, what happens when we spend most of our lives indoors, bathed in artificial light, sitting under LEDs, in front of screens, behind glass, and away from natural sunlight? This makes you think of sunlight in a whole new light, no pun intended, not just as vitamin D source, but as a much deeper biological input. Another idea from this book is that this charge separation actually drives movement. Pollack shows examples where water flows without pumps, purely from electrical gradients created by structured water. Applying that to biology, it changes how we think about things like blood flow, lymph movement, cellular transport. Nature tends to reuse simple mechanisms everywhere. So the idea that water itself is part of the engine of life makes perfect sense when you zoom out. So, what does this show me personally? Well, this book shows me that biology isn't primarily chemical. It's electrical and structural first and chemical second. Now, I ask myself, am I getting enough natural light? Am I spending enough time outdoors? Am I moving in ways that support tissue structure? Am I living in an environment that matches what humans evolved in? Those are very different questions than what supplement should I take? So if I had to boil this whole book down to one key takeaway, it would be this. Water is not just the background of life, it is a key component to life's operating system. Since water interacts deeply with light and electrical charge, then health is way more about our relationship with our environment than we've been led to believe. Not in some mystical way, but in a very much physics way. And that's the thread I'm really interested in pulling on more moving forward. Trying to understand health not just through biology and chemistry, but through light, water, and the natural world we evolved inside of. So if you've read this book, I'd be really curious what you took away from it. It's absolutely one of those books that makes you pause and think that there's definitely more going on under the surface than we've been told. And those are books worth paying attention to, and we're just getting started. Thanks for listening.